is Gemara Yevamos Daf Nun Hey, and as we begin a new month, I'd like to dedicate one last day as a tremendous chos Ilin Neshama of Chaim Mordechai ben Naftali Tzvi, whose yahrzeit was last month on Chav Zayin Nisan. All these shirim for the second half of the month were dedicated to Lili Nishmasai, and Baruch Hashem, so many Daf Gemara, so many Jews learning together should bring Chaim Mordechai ben Naftali Tzvi to a higher place in Gan Eden Shalmaila, as well as learning Shvias Chol Shidduch V'Sol Chaim Devar Tamzibas Ve'Roch Hashem Lemizava V'Kibetel Shem Chayav V'Blum Yehudas Bas Sima Malka, as well as Chos V'Rosh Shlem Shel Yosef and Yifred Shmo Ben Tilon V'Talzim V'Chlas V'Chom Bas Yivas Blum Bas Mindel Chaim Moshe Yeshua Ben Malka V'Shavik V'Shirchana Beisoich Sha'ar Chayli Yisrael. And we're in the middle of a long and a lengthy discussion in the bottom of Nandal and Mebeis. We a little bit ran out of time yesterday. And we're in the middle of discussing the pasuk of Ervas Achois Avicha Lo Sigalei, Ervas Achois Imecha Lo Sigalei, in which we learned out from here that one's father, sister, bein min av, bein min ha'id, maternal or paternal, are both forbidden. And because the pasuk was used as a drasha, we as well extended the pasuk to teach us a din about one who is together with an animal, one who does ha'ara, the beginning of tashmish with an animal, that is forbidden as well. And even though one having relations with an animal is the highest level, is Chayin Misas Bezdin, and one that is together with the Achais Av and Achais Im, the father and the mother, sister, is not only, but his Krisos is a lower level. So why are we learning out Chayin Misas Bezdin for Chai Krisos? The answer that we concluded with is because the pasuk of Erbos Achais Imecha, Erbos Avicha is all lidrasha. It's all coming to teach us the Chiddush, Bein min av and Bein min ha'im, and therefore we can as well apply the limud of one being with an animal that are is forbidden as well. But now ask the Gemara, Lama li lemichtav achais av, about 12 lines on the bottom. The first one line is lemichtava. Ask the Gemara, why did the Torah have to write Achais Av, Achais Im, the sister of the father, the sister of the mother? Why did the Torah have to write that the maternal sister is aser with regard to the father's sister? As we concluded yesterday, if you look 2 lines up, we said, so ask the Gemara, why do we need 2 drashis, 2 psukim? Because Rachman b'achais Av, I would have thought shkin yishlach chayis. I would have thought that what's the reason? Because there is a chayis, there is a relationship with regard to the nachala, because it comes to the father. But when it comes to the mother, who has nothing to do with the ancestral relationship, maybe it's not included. Because I would have thought shkin vadais. A relationship through a mother is always a more practical, more chamertika relationship. What does that mean? What that means is we always can know with absolute certainty whose one's mother is. Why? Because she gave birth to this child. But we cannot ever know with absolute certainty who the father is. For all we know, she slept with someone else. So because Achais Aim has a chomrashkin vadayis, it's absolute, it's 100%. That's the reason why we had to write both cases. So says the Gemara, that really concluded off yesterday's discussion. But within the discussion yesterday, we brought up a different din. The din of Daidasai. The din of Daidasai, the father's brother's wife, asks the Gemara, V'Daidasai, 10 lines on the bottom. First one line is Dipshita. Dipshita le latana debei min ha'av v'loy min ha'im. The Tana yesterday said Daidasai is what? Min ha'av v'loy min ha'im. It was pashut. It was simple to the Tana that this din of father's brother's wife is only through the father and not through the mother. Minali, where do you get that from? Amarava, I see daidai. It's exeris like shav. Ksiv acher bas daidai gila. Uksiv asam. And it says elsewhere. It says elsewhere. Oy daidai ben daidai galenu. Do you have to redeem? This is referring to redeeming a yid that sold himself as an eved. Malanalan min avaloy min ha'im. Just like over there when it talks about redeeming a yid who sold himself as a eved to a non-Jew, it's only referring to one father's paternal brother, not maternal. Says the Gemara, the obvious kasha of Hasam Minalan. And how do we know the din over there? The din by Eved, how do we know that's only paternally and not maternally? From his mishpacha, family, you should redeem him. Mishpachas av kari mishpacha, mishpachas ein, einoi kari mishpacha. And that is the end of part number 2. And now we go into a completely new din. Once we're on the topic of siblings through the mother, we bring up a Mishnah. Asks the Gemara, and this is a Mishnah that we're going to get to on Sadivav. They tell a man, your wife died. So what does he think? So he goes and he marries a sister. Now, it's a little bit of a confusing case. Let's at least get the words. He goes and he marries a paternal sister. Mesa. Then they tell her, by the way, your wife died again. Now he goes and marries her maternal sister. Mesa, the third wife died. He goes and marries a paternal sister. Mesa, and then he goes and marries a maternal sister. So he went, what was the case over here? He went paternal, maternal sisters. 5 different wives over here. What's the halacha? Mutter. And then, what's mutter? Then what happens is, they come along and they say, by the way, we made a dreadful mistake, and Lamaisa, all these women are alive. So, at some level, he married 5 women, all sisters, at some level sisters, and they're all alive, which of course you cannot do. So says the Gemara, what is he allowed to be with? Mutter, Barishayna, Ubishlishis, Ubechamishes. He's allowed to be together with the first, the third, and the 5th wife. Now, what is the reason that he could be with them? Because once he's married to A, the first wife, and they tell her she's dead, but she's alive, when he goes and he marries B, that marriage is nothing. Why is that marriage nothing? Because one is not allowed to marry his wife's sister. Now, when he goes and he marries C, that marriage is, yes, a good marriage. Why is that marriage, yes, a good marriage? Because C is unrelated to A. And then he goes and marries D. That marriage is no good because D is related to C. Then when he goes to marry E, that marriage is, yes, good because E is unrelated to D. So he is currently married to 1, 3, and 5. 3 women who are unrelated to each other. The reason why they are unrelated to each other is because they're all paternal but not maternal sisters. And therefore he's married to all of them. And the halach is, not only is he married to them, he exempts their co-wives. And he's forbidden to 2 and 4. And if he dies, then what? Then the fact that he's with the Yavam does not exempt the co-wife. So 1, 3, and 5. Let's say the case changed and the first wife really died, and then he was together with the second wife, thereby the second marriage being a good marriage, so everything switches. So now, he's not married to 3 and 5, he's only going to be married to 2 and 4. Says the Gemara, as we turn over to the Neham and Aleph, it's running a little bit late. What do we see? We see that maternal sister is forbidden, whether it comes from the father or the mother. Minolan. So now says the Gemara, okay, you told me a case, but where do we know this din from? And this is going to be a little bit repetitive of the drashos we had yesterday, because these are going to be the sources. So we learn out from one's own sister. Just like one's own sister, whether it's a maternal or paternal sister is forbidden. Ask Gemara, wait, we know this one called Deidasai, the father's brother's wife, who's only aser, not from the father and the mother. So ask the Gemara, why don't we learn out from Deidasai? Ma Deidasai mina av v'loy minaim. Avkan mina av v'loy minaim. Says the Gemara, Mistabra me'achayis av v'loy. It's more logical to equate to the sister. Shkein kurei ve'atzmai me'kurei ve'atzmai. We rather learn out sisters are kurei ve'atzmai, and therefore similarly achayis aviv and imai. Whereas Deidasai is not your own relative. Ask the Gemara, no. It's more logical to equate it to Deidasai. Why? Deidasai is Kedushin related. Deidasai came through a marriage. So too, this case came through a marriage. Says Gemara, you're right, new limut. We'll learn it out from one owns a brother's wife, not Deidasai, the father's brother's wife. Meishes ach, his own brother's wife. The Shekin Davar Aidei Kedushin and Kravaratz, because that is both Mailas. It's Kedushin related, because it's the brother's wife, and Kravaratz, that it's his brother, and one's brother's wife is forbidden, both maternally and paternally, so too we'll learn that to his own to the wife's sister. Veishas ach gufa minal. Says, where do you know that din from? Where do you know the din of ishas ach? Titania, we learn it from a brisa. The brisa says 10 lines down. First line is ervas. Ervas ishas achicha loy sigale. Says the brisa, you should not uncover the erva of the wife of your brother. Bein minav, bein minaim. Atar bein minav, bein minaim. Bein minav, bein minaim. B'dinu. Chayiv kam v'chayiv achayse. This is obligated, and the sister is obligated. Ma achayse bein minav, bein minaim. Av kam bein minav, bein minaim. Or maybe not. Or tlach l'derech. We don't know. We're trying to figure it out. Zu chayiv kam v'chayiv b'dei dasai. Ma dei dasai bein minav, bein minaim. Av kam bein minav, v'loy minaim. Near l'mi daima. Where do we compare it to? Dani kravi atzim, kravi atzim. T'chil dei dasai. Shekarov ha'af. Or maybe not, says the Gemara. Or klach l'derech. Zed donim davar shali dei kedushin. Mi davar shali dei kedushin. V'atachich achayse shisra abba me'ilov. Ta'ameloi ma ervas achicha hi bein minav bein minaim. So we learn out from ervas achicha that comes both from the father and from the mother. But says the Gemara, how do you know? How do you know? Maybe ervas achicha maybe that pasuk he's only Beishas Ach Minav. Says the Gemara, maybe we need both sukkim to teach us the same din. Again, the brother's wife, one teaching us when there are children, and one teaching us when there's no children. Midirav huna nafka. Says Gemara, no, in a case where there is no children, and the husband's still alive, we already know that's forbidden from where? From Rav Huna. Rav Huna already taught us that is forbidden, and that is something that we learned out yesterday on Nundal Amid Beis, and that was learned out from the fact that it calls her Anida. Ask the Gemara, Veima Aidi Vaidi Beishas Ach Mina'af. Maybe they're both talking about paternally. Explains the Gemara. Why? If we know this already. When the Torah told us, says the Torah, when there's no children, then you're allowed to do Yibam. What's the obvious implication? It's forbidden. Says the Gemara, wait. This should sound familiar. We had this exact give and change yesterday in Amud Beis. Perhaps when there's no children, you're forbidden. And Visharya Liyavam, but Yesh Labanim Sharya Alma, actually not the exact change, very similar. But Yesh Labanim Sharya Alma, Visharya Liyavam. Maybe if there's children, you're mutter to both. Choose either go marry the Yavam or marry the world. Inami, or perhaps Ein Labanim is a mitzvah. Yesh Labanim is a shas. Inami Ein Labanim in Yesh Labanim loy. V'lava b'chala say. Kasav kra'achin ervas achicha gila. And therefore, that's why we need the pasuk of ervas achicha gila to say that the brother's wife is, when there are children, going to be forbidden. And therefore, the pasuk is going to be extra to teach us that the wife of the maternal brother is forbidden as well. So says the Gemara, why is everyone not equal with regarding to Yibam? Why do we say that the wife of one's maternal brother is the same as the wife of one's paternal brother with regard to Yibam? That what? We know that Ish's Ach, the wife of your paternal brother, after the husband dies, that's called Yibam. So fundamental shayla in all of Yibam. Ask the Gemara, maybe Ish's Ach Mina'im should also have a din of Yibam. Not like we learned from the beginning of the Masechta, that Ish's Ach is only mutter b'Yibam Mina'av. Amakra, he b'aviyasai tehei, says the pasuk he, that means she should remain, that when it's a Ishas Ach Mina'im, she remains forbidden even after her husband dies without children. Says the Gemara, Achai said the Kasba Kari Islam Alis. Now we're going back to all the dinim of Krisos, all the dinim of Arayis. Yesterday we learned out that Rav Yena taught us, Kol Atayeva, teaches us that all Arayis are under one umbrella. So ask the Gemara, Chayset the Kasab Kare Islamali. Why did the Torah have to write that there's Kares by Achaisai, says the Gemara, Lichter Rav Yochanan teaches a different thing. The Amar Rav Yochanan about 8 lines into the wide lines of the Neheyam and Aleph. Shemasan kulam be'elam achas chayva kol achas v'achas. A different thing. If someone sleeps with multiple of his arayis be'elam echad with one act of forgetting, so usually we would think, so it's one Isser. No, says Rav Yochanan, the Torah splits up each of the rayis. It's very similar to what we learned in Masechah Shabbos, that each Torah splits up each of the malachos to teach us that you're chayiv in each and every one, a Isser daraisa and a chatas. Ask the Gemara, Rav Yitzchak, Damar chayiv kol Damar. Kol chayiv krisis bechlal ayu v'lam yatzak kares v'achayis l'dana bekares v'lau l'malkus. Rav Yitzchak says, no, you know what? The Torah speaks out krisis by your sister to teach us a different din, to teach us that there's krisis and not malkus. L'chalik minol, and Rav Yitzchak know that there's a separate isser for each and every aveira. Nafkalei mevel isha b'nina tamasal l'chayiv kol isha v'isha. And that's where Rav Yitzchak learns it out from. So says the Gemara, okay, what about Deidasai? Deidasai goes Barachmana, Ariyam Yiyu Lamali. Why does the Torah have to write by Deidasai, by father, brother's wife, that are Aririm Yiyu, which means that they should die childless, which means what? Krisos. What is Kares? Kares is Rahman al-Itzlan, one's children's are Nifter. So why did the Torah have to say Krisos by Deidasai, by the father's brother's wife? Explains the Gemara, you know why? The Rabbah asked the following contradiction. It says he should die childless. The children will die. One in the past and one in the future. So asks Rabbah, what are these two psukim teaching us? If he has children, or Rahman al-Itzlan, he's going to bury the children. He's not going to have children in the future. Why? Because Rahman al-Yiyu, he will die childless. You would think any children he has until this chat, until this avera on which he's chayiv krisos, they will die. But from the avera and further, afterwards, I would think those children will not die. Because Rahman Arim Yamus, your children will die. Because Rahman Arim Yamus, the children you had not. Sricha, that's the reason why the Torah has to write these two psukim of Arim, you Arim Yamaisu, with regard to Krisis. Says the Gemara, okay, after a whole long and lengthy discussion, what are we ending off with? This goes all the way back to yesterday, that Ha'ara, the beginning of Tashmish, is Aser by all Harayis. All Harayis, how do we know? Rav Yaina. And then we sort of got sidetracked almost for the last basic blot. I'm in Beis of yesterday and I'm in Alpha of today, dealing with all the different arrays, permutations, etc. But now says the Gemara, Ha'ara dechayve lavin minol, 4 lines from the bottom of Nunheim and Aleph. Where do we know chayve lavin, not chayve krisis? Where do we know if someone does ha'ara at the beginning of Tashmish, the achnasa za'iver? Where do we know that's forbidden even by chayve lavin? Explains the Gemara, the Gali Rachman is Shechva Zera Gabi Shivcha Charufa. The Torah says Shechva Zera. The Torah says if there's a relationships of seed, if there's actual Zera that is inserted into the woman by Shivcha Charufa, by a maidservant which is marrying an Eved Ivri, Mechlal B'chayve Lavin Be'ara. From there we learn out that other chayve lavin, just like a shivcha charufa is iser of a lav, is also forbidden with ha'ara. Says Gemara once again, Adarabba. Medgar Rachman ha'ara b'chayve krisos, mechlad chayve lam migmar biyah. We learned out yesterday, Rav Yaina, kol ha'teivos, all krisos are forbidden with what? Even the beginning of Tashmish, that would seem to imply that chayve lavin is what? Only a complete biyah. Amar Ravashi, 2 lines from the bottom, and kein lishte kara mishivcha charufa. So then the pasuk should have been quiet. Why did the Torah say shechva zera by shechva charufa? Must be to teach us that only over there, then, and to teach us all chayve lavin. So explains the Gemara, ara the chayve lavin de kohuna minam. Where do we know? Where do we know that? And by shivcha charufa, that's when you need to have a full tashmish, a zera. That's when it has to have an insertion of the seed. But of the other chayve lavin, it's even the techilas of tashmish. Says the Gemara by chayve lavin dikohuna. How do we know even ha'ara is forbidden on the last line? Asay kicha the chayve asay minayin. Where do we know that ha'ara is even forbidden on the chayve asay? As we turn over to Nunheya Mebis. Asya bia. We learn it out from the Gzeir Shava of bia from these psukim in Devarim. Yevamo l'shok minalan. How do we know that if a Yevama doesn't marry the Yavam, goes and marries someone else, and does only hara, the beginning of Tashmish, how do you know that's as well forbidden? Ilaman damar lav lav, ilaman damar asay. Machlekes, what is the isser, whether it's an it's a kasha. Ask the Gemara, what's your question? It's a machlekes, whether it's a lav or an asay, but it's definitely forbidden. So ask the Gemara, no, that wasn't my question. Where do we know that if the Yavam and the Yavam does only hara, it consummates the marriage? And this goes back, if you remember yesterday, we said hara is also by kol atayivais, by all arayis. We learn out from kol atayivais Rabbi Yoina. And I actually said, we also learn out that the Yibam is consummated. And I said, no, wait, let's hold that. That's the second part. And that's here today. That's here in Nehemiah and Beis. A blot later, we finally get to this detail. Where do we see that Yavam to Yavama, if they only do ha'ara, the beginning of a tashmish, where we know that's still called a biyah, that it completes the marriage? Explains the Gemara, Asya biyah. We learn now from the Gzira Shava. Isha labayla minalan. Where do we know that if a man and a wife have the techilas tashmish, they're considered husband and wife if it completes the marriage? Asya kicha. Amarov. So says the Gemara, once we finished explaining that all types of tashmish are considered complete with techilas biyah, says the Gemara, says Rava, there are 3 times in the Torah. Loma li dekasev rachmana shichva zera. The Torah 3 times says that hara is not enough. And what do you need to have a shichva zera, a complete tashmish? Says Rava, why? What are the 3 times? V'shichva charufa. So why in these 3 instances are we more makel, we'll call it if you're thinking, because it's more makel because you need to require to have a complete act of tashmish to make it asr. Why? Says the Gemara, says Rava, let's explain 6 lines down. The shivcha rufam kedamar, we already explained that because it's chayve lavin. The ishes ish pralim mishamish meis. Ishes ish comes to teach us that if one has tashmish with an aver mace, without an erection, he will not be liable. Says the Gemara, 1 second. That's true. But there is a mandam that holds that even if they have tashmish without an aver, chay without an erection, it's still obligated. Says the Gemara, no. It means if one has relations with a woman after she is dead, a married woman that dies, he has relations with the corpse, that is excluded. The you know the havamina would have been even after she dies, she's still considered by the Torah sheira his relative. So I would think that if he goes and he sleeps with her after he dies, he's obligated as an ish's ish. Kamash malon shichva zera. Says the Torah, no. The only time is an isser by the ish's ish if it's a shichva zera, and not if he's with this dead body. And finally, the Saita Lamali, the 3rd case of Saita, why do we need this Torah to say shichva zera? Lichda Tanya. Shichva zera pral davar acher. Comes to exclude davar acher. My davar acher. Rav Sheshes the pral l'shekina la shaloike darka. It comes to exclude with regard to Saita. If someone warns his wife, don't be with this man, but don't be with him in what manner? With a bia shaloi kedarka, an unnatural type of bia from behind. That type of kina, that type of warning is not considered a warning that could create a saita. But Amrli Rava says, I don't understand, what's the havamina? Mishkavei Isha Kesiv. The Torah says, Mishkavei Isha, which means any form of sleeping together, whether it's Kedarka, Shaloi Kedarka. So why wouldn't it make a Saita? Elam Rava, you're right. Probably Shekina Lo Derech Eivarim. He says, don't be together with bodily contact. Not that they're actually going to have relations, kedarka, shaloi kedarka, but rather it means that they're going to have quote-unquote relations, whatever that means. He's going to be rubbing himself against her. So Amrlei Abaya, Pritzusa Rachmana. Says Abaya, I don't understand. Did the Torah say that Pritzus is Aser? Of course it doesn't make a sight. And the whole dinim of Saita, it's still asr, just doesn't make you a saita. Saita is a very unique case. Kina and stira, warning, seclusion, and that's only if it's a real maisa aveira. So it's true, this is the terrible thing they're doing. It's pritzus. But it doesn't make a saita. What's your havamina, says Abaya. Elam Abaya, you know what? The fact that Torah wrote Shechva Zera by Saita comes to exclude. Now we're going to get to the question which we mentioned yesterday. What is ha'ara? Says Abaya, you know what it comes to exclude? We excluded nishika. Nishika literally means kissing, but here it refers to nishika meaning the aver contacting the wife. Does it not going in seemingly at all to her, and not the wife, this woman, but rather just a touching between the man and the woman. Says the Gemara, but this now opens up the Pandora's box, the fundamental shayla of what is ha'ara. According to the Mandamar, that what is ha'ara, like we've been explaining, that there is an insertion of the aver at some bit, then it makes sense. That by Saita comes to exclude even Nishika. Elamanda Amar Zu Nishika. There is a Manda Amar that says, what is Ha'ara? What is Ha'ara is Nishika. Is just a touching of the Iver to the woman. So Michael Amemar, what are you going to say? Really, the case is that he warned her not to be bepritzos, not to rub up against her. So Abaya asked, what's the havamina? Of course that's not forbidden. No, but we still need a pasuk. We would have thought that there's a fundamental idea of Saita. That the Baal Tali Rachmana, maybe Saita has nothing to do with Tashmish. Maybe Saita is whatever the husband determines, he is makbid on. And if he warns her, don't be derech evarim with this man, don't rub up against him, even though you're right, it's not a ma'aseh Tashmish, it's only priestess. But we never have a meaning that would create a Saita. V'aka kapid, kamash malan, that does not create a saita. And that is the end of the 3 times that the Torah says Shechva Zera, by Shifcha Charufa, by Saita, and by Ishes Ish, and Rava explaining each one who coming to exclude. And we conclude today's shir with Amar Shmuel says Shmuel. We're about 15 lines to the bottom. The first line is Vakaka. Says Shmuel, Ha'ara Zunashika. As we explained a moment ago, a fundamental machlekes, what is Ha'ara? Says Shmuel, you know what Ha'ara is? Techilas Tashmish. Excuse me, that didn't say anything. What is Ha'ara Nishika? Kissing of the Iver touching the woman by Samakam. And explain Shmuel, it's an example is a man who puts his finger on a mouth. It's impossible that it doesn't push the flesh a little bit. And that pushing of the flesh, Shmuel considers penetration. Shmuel agrees that the Iver has to go in a bit. But says Shmuel, when you put your finger in your mouth, it goes in that teeny little bit. That teeny little bit, which we're calling nishika, just a touching, that teeny little bit, says Shmuel, is enough to be called ha'ara. Says Rabbi Rav Chana, a complete biyah by yeshivcha charufa, zoom hachnasas atara. That's called a shivcha. That's called a complete tashmish. That's called a complete tashmish. Is what? Just entering in the atara. Masav Rav Sheishes asks Rav Sheishes, says Rav Sheishes, in the case of Shivcha Charufa, she's designated this Shivcha to this Eved Ivri, and one sleeps with her in Chayiv al Biyas HaMeiruk, one is only Chayiv if there's Meiruk, if there is ejaculation, if there is Zera that went into her. Maila Meiruk Gid does not refer to Meiruk when the seed comes out of the gid of the man, and therefore says the Gemara, Hachnasas atara is not enough. Putting the Iver in a dot is not enough. You have to actually have a real shechva zera. You have to have zera that goes into her. Explains Gemara, Mirak atara. It means that the atara goes in, and from there, of course, comes the seed, and that itself is enough. Kiyasa Ravdimiam Rav Yechlan Ha'ara zu Hachnasas atara. That's ha'ara. Amr Leiv Rav Chana. What do you mean? Rav Chana did not say this. He said that it's a complete tashmish. Amr lahu, oy ihu shakri, oy ana shakri. One of us is lying. He also Rabin, when Rabba came out, Rav Yechon Ara zu achnas atara. Adi Rabba, excuse me, zu achnas atara. Adi Rabba bar Rav Chana vade polig, adi Shmuel min lema polig, loy min shika vad achnas atara ha'ara karila. There's a middle level. From the shika until achnas atara, that's going to be ha'ara. And ki asa Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda Rav Yechon Ara zu achnas atara, gemar bia, mamish. And we'll pick up tomorrow. We'll read this last few lines again in quantifying exactly what is the neshika, what is achnas atara, what is the gemar bia, and we'll pick it up from here in the next year. B'siyata dishmaya.